Hello, today's tutorial is how to make a thank you card, and in fact I'm not making just one thank you card but 50 today. These cards are pre-printed. This is watercolor paper. I've linked a 140-pound watercolor paper in the description, and also a cutting board that I would recommend if you would like to check those out. They're both from Amazon. I printed these on my Brother printer as if I was printing on cardstock, and I do cut the watercolor paper down to a typical cardstock size according to the width. So these are 8.5. I leave mine a little bit longer just because I'm still figuring out how to kind of center the lettering on what I'm printing. But I just printed in black and white, and as you can see in the video, I'm cutting these down eventually to 4x6, which is the type of card that I prefer to make because you can easily buy 4x6 inch frames, and I know a lot of people like to frame these, so that's a good standard when making cards. You can also get craft, the dark brown or the light brown craft envelopes pretty easily. Those are also linked in the description if you would like to see which envelopes I prefer using. I finally found some that are very easy to seal and they stay sealed. So that's been difficult for me to find. So the ones that are linked in the description are the actual ones that I sell when I sell my hand painted cards. Now, why am I making 50 of these, you may be wondering, and it's simply because I made these to give to our parents who took care of our dog while we were gone, and I loved the design so much that I decided maybe others would like to purchase these at my market. So I'm making a batch. Generally, when I create watercolor, hand-painted original watercolor cards for my markets, I will batch them. So I figured 50 would be a reasonable number. It was quite taxing on my body, so if you make 50, these are very detailed cards. They're a little bit more elaborate than some of my other tutorials. You can check those out if you like, just because they have more florals on them and lots of greens. So here I'm figuring out where to start painting my peonies. When I print, my lettering generally is not in the center. Like I said, I have not mastered how to do that, but that's okay. I like that about these cards. So I'm just placing the flowers to fill the white spaces, and I'm going to show you how to do 2 cards at once generally, just because it's a good habit to make more than one, so that while you're letting one card dry, you can be working on another one and you don't mess up the cards by painting on them while they're still wet. So I'm doing a peony on this card. I'll switch over to the next card and show you. Some people think these look like roses. Peonies, how they look on the paper all kind of depends on the view, if you want a top-down view or a side view or a bottom-to-top view. So these generally I'm looking at pretty much from the top, and it's just a bunch of C's or half moons that you just kind of circle around the center and work your way out. I'm doing the base layer, and as you can see here, I'm starting on the second card with my little C's. I dab here and there if I've got too much white space, but I just put the C's all the way around in petal shapes, and I like to alternate them. I make some of them whiter, some of them thinner, and it's easier if you can kind of step back a little bit, hold your brush before you paint the next outer edge of the flower, just to make sure that you have that circular but organic looking type of shape to your flower, and then you can move on to the next one. Now, when I did the batch of 50, I went ahead and I did this for all 50. I did all of the flowers, the peonies, and then I went back in and added the buds and the greenery, and I'll show you that at the end of the video. But right now I'm just focusing on these 2 cards. Painting florals, I believe, is a little bit similar, at least the way I paint them, to creating a floral arrangement. And so in a floral arrangement, I like to start with the showstopper flowers. So those are the flowers with the biggest heads, or maybe the most interesting or full petal orientation, or maybe the boldest color. So I put those in my vase first. And just like I do that in the vase, I'm doing that on my card. I'm setting my foundation here, filling the largest white spaces with my largest peonies, and I'm not trying to be symmetrical with this. I think if you focus on symmetry, especially with loose florals, it's not as pleasing to the eye as maybe a more organic approach, maybe some kind of falling off the page even, and not centrally aligned with the lettering on the card. So I'm generally starting in a corner, and then to keep myself from being symmetrical, I'm not putting my second flower down in the opposite corner, but I'm putting it maybe under the think part of the thank you card, and then putting one in another corner and one above the U, as you can see here. So once the base is established, I can put in what I call filler flowers, and I'm just doing little buds, peony buds here, using the same navy blue from my color palette. Now this watercolor set I've linked also in the description. I have had this for, oh gosh, I think maybe 4 years. Now I have refilled the olive and the navy because those are my favorite colors. I've refilled those with tube paints, but all the other colors are original. So if you purchase a watercolor set like this, they usually run anywhere between 30 and 60, maybe even more than that. But I like around the $35 range. You'll get a lot of longevity from it, a lot of use. This one came with 2 color palettes. You can see on the top there's one, and then there's one underneath for mixing colors. And I've gotten so much use out of this, so it is well worth the investment. I've made oodles and oodles of watercolor cards over the years with this, and I really like this. Is a Winsor Newton. I really like this brand. And as for paintbrushes, I'm still experimenting with those, so I haven't picked my favorite paintbrushes yet. So once I do, I'll share those with you as well, so that you can have some good materials to work with. I do like using a round brush here, and I've used the same brush for this entire card. And even with these buds, even though they're smaller, I'm still using this round pointed brush here. For the filler flowers, as you can see, I'm using some sets of 3. I'm using a single here and there. Sometimes I'll just put 2 on. I like to vary that because it makes the eye kind of dart around and see all that is on this card and all the little details. After this dries, I'm going back in and using my olive to make some stems and little leaves coming off of the peonies. I just use a little jagged stroke there, which really helps to make these little peonies pop. And I love the contrast between the olive and the navy here. I'll go back through and do stems for the my filler bud flowers here after I finish the larger peonies, and then afterwards I'm going to add some more greenery just to fill in the white spaces. I wanted this card to be very full, which is a little bit different than a lot of the cards that I sell. I have like a single floral or a single leaf or branch, because I also love the simplicity of those. But I was in the mood to make these pop and felt a little bit more maximalist rather than minimalist, and it was a little out of character for me, but I really enjoyed making these. And one thing about batching cards is you'll always have several to be able to give and to send, but it really helps with your practice. And I have the tendency to overthink painting sometimes, but if I'm making 50 of them and there's 4 big peonies on each one, that's 200 peony practice paintings that I'm getting in. So with each one, I'm learning something. My stroke is becoming more automatic and natural, and is becoming muscle memory, and I'm getting better and better, and I get a really good feel for how the pigment acts, how the water reacts on the page, how much pigment I want, how I like it pooling in some darker spaces. So that's a benefit of making bulk cards. Now, if you're super brand new, I wouldn't suggest making 50. I would probably start with maybe 5 or 10 or even just 2. And that's fine. And I'm recognizing, I think one thing I forgot to include in this video was I went over each of the peonies with another layer of the blue. Now, I didn't go over the entire flower head, but you can see I added some darker little swoops or little strokes throughout the peony, just maybe 4 or 5, just to give that a little bit of dimension. And in some of the buds, I did the same thing to make that pop. So remember to start your paintings light and then work up to adding dark layers onto your painting. So I'm going to let you sit and enjoy the rest of the filling in of this. And at the end here, I will show you my entire range of 50 cards in the peony step, then the added greenery step. So please, if you are enjoying these tutorials, like this one, check out my other tutorials, and subscribe for all things creative. Thank you.